Hello. Today I'm talking about polyamory, monogamy, and chastity in marriage, and and how you can interchange the three. And I'm going to focus a little bit, obviously, on the polyamory versus the monogamy because it's often a debate as to what's right or better or worse. And in my experience, I've experienced both in my marriage, and they both are beautiful and serve a different purpose. So I think I'd like to change the discussion from instead of battling the three, because many people aren't chaste in their marriages as well, and that's another conversation. Or some people think that once they choose one, that's it for life. And my relationship has gone in cycles, it seems. So I don't know. I think we figured out how to do it, so I'm sharing our experience. My husband, from BC, artist, tripper, is very, very open. Way more open and secure. He had all of that baggage figure out before I came into it. When I came into the marriage, although I was sexually liberated as a single woman, and I had my fun before I got married, I was still under the impression that when you get married, that means you're choosing monogamy. That's the whole point of marriage. All the rest of the vows and the whatever was bullshit to me. The only thing I ever thought about marriage was monogamy. If I get married, it means I can't fuck anybody else. That's it. you know. Um, and then we challenged that belief. And at first, I was very, very fearful. I think because I did online research of a lot of blogs and forums, and it was mostly one spouse that didn't want to but felt like they had to, and their drama is really painful when it's that situation. When both spouses are curious, I think it's a lot less boo boo, although it's still like you have jealousy. I mean, there's things you have to get through. But one thing about Glenn and I, we never had regular vows. We didn't even have a regular ceremony. Ours was like a big spell. And we wrote our own intentions for the marriage. And monogamy wasn't in it. What was it? I mean, we also didn't say we vow to be polyamorous. You know what I mean? We never did that either. The intention going in was monogamy. We were monogamous at the time we married, and our trip was that it was going to be a monogamous marriage, and there was no discussion by either of us about anything different. Once we were married and that novelty wore off, because me and him were both so sexually active before each other, this whole monogamy trip got a bit old. And we started to struggle a little bit in the marriage. It was like, I don't know, it was just not, it wasn't resonating. And we weren't resonating as a result. And then we thought, okay, well, we need to try something. And the thing that never wavered was we didn't want to be apart. That was not an option. So how are we supposed to do this other than to challenge the paradigm we were told we had to live? What felt right to us? We started doing research, and polyamory seemed to be the answer. Now, my husband already, again, the whole laid back BC thing, he already knew about this and whatever. I was the one that had my mind blown, not even knowing that these communities existed and that people lived this way. Now, what I had seen, the reason I knew this was possible and that it could work was as a child, I was exposed to a lot of monogamy because that was the standard paradigm. But I was also exposed to a lot of philandering. There was a lot of cheating going on and divorces and hearts being broken. And one of the people that I was watching as I grew up was a person who was married in a monogamous, supposedly monogamous relationship, and he was 100% devoted to this person. I mean, whatever the spouse asked for, the spouse got. And he had these relationships outside the marriage affairs, but they were meaningful. Like they were deep and meaningful relationships. And some lasted years and years and years. And it never took away from the marriage. And you knew this because his spouse had no idea these things were going on. Not a freaking clue. And that just goes to show you how he was able to keep so many people fulfilled. And it was never done maliciously. It was never with an attitude of, look what I can get away with. I want my cake and eat it too. It wasn't like that. It was like he had this deep union commitment, life commitment, and they both sacrificed a lot to be with each other. And that never wavered. And I'm talking through illnesses and all sorts of stuff. And there was tons of drama. And they never, never, never once wavered from each other. But then there were these affections elsewhere that were also deep and meaningful in their own way, and they helped each other and were friends and support systems and cheerleaders, often cheerleaders of the marriage when the marriage may have had some issues. You know, just a sound, I don't know, it was just so I could see that, and I thought to myself, the love is so sincere. Why does it have to be a lie? Like everybody's happy, why does it have to be a big secret? And that never made sense to me growing up. So then when I found out about polyamory, that was kind of that. It was exactly what I had seen. I mean, I knew another couple whose husband was allowed, this was the woman's comfort zone, was she was not interested in sex with him. She was not going to happen, and she was tired of him pestering her for it. And she wanted to be off the hook sexually. This woman allowed him to have a mistress of his choosing. He could pick, and this woman, she was like a bit of a control freak, and she handled everything in the house, right? So what she would do was allow him to choose a mistress. The wife, because they had a lot of money, got the girl an apartment, paid the girl's rent, wrote the girl a check every month so that this girl would be available. Her job was literally, and I mean, some women I guess would be insulted, but you'd be surprised because these are mistresses that fell in love with him anyway. These would last years and years and years. And once they were in love and having this affair, he would say, look, like, you know, my wife doesn't mind and I can afford this. I'd like to get you an apartment. The checks are going to come from my wife. Don't freak out. That just goes to show you how consensual this is. She just never wants to meet you, never wants to know you, never wants to see you. But you will be provided for. I don't want you to have to get a job because it's not often that I'll be able to see you, because there still had to be discretion. It was a trippy connection where he couldn't say, I'm going to so-and-so's house right now. It wasn't like that. It was like, you live your life with your family and with me as your wife. And if you find some spare time, I don't care where you go. And now you have a place to go, so you have no excuse to make it conflict with our marriage or my schedule. And I was very, very young when I was seeing this stuff. So I think that kind of left an imprint of what openness can mean. And I mean, their marriage was not struggling. As much as he had these mistresses, the devotion was at home, and his wife came first. And there was never a doubt about that in anybody's mind, not even the mistresses, you know? So I saw these different type of relationships, and how those were the people in my life that were truly fulfilled. Everybody else was doing it as a sacrifice or because you had to or it's the right thing to do, but a lot of them didn't seem happy. So, and this isn't a monogamy doesn't work video, because a lot of monogamy does work, and I'm practicing, well, we're gone to the point of practicing chastity right now because we're both physically unwell, but we'll talk about that too. but monogamy is very comfortable, very safe, and very easy. Monogamy is easy. People think that monogamy is hard. It's not. Monogamy is the easy choice. Polyamory is what's hard. But polyamory is truly fulfilling and self actualizing. So, there's a merit. So, trying to find our own paradigm, we started doing research in polyamory and asking a lot of questions and figuring out how it's done. And I had to do research because I had a lot of ego fears, abandonment issues. So I was afraid he'd find somebody younger, cuter, and in the beginning and here's a struggle in polyamory actually, for those of you that are thinking about it. In the beginning, when you first meet, well, let me take a step back. Some people will meet, they fulfill each other 100%. They're so, in love, even 40 years later, they can't imagine themselves with anybody else. And those are like the true monogamos. We're going to call them monogamos. And that's beautiful. Like when you see that, that's just, beautiful. So this is not a condemnation. If that works for you, awesome, right? But sometimes it just doesn't, and that's not bad either. So you're with this person that fulfills 85, 90% of everything that you need, but there's still this gaping void in you for something a little bit deeper. And I'm not going to use sex as an example because sometimes that's what it is, and that's why somebody needs to be fulfilled elsewhere. But that brings up a lot of feelings and insecurity. That's a hot topic, so we're not going to use that as an example. I'm going to use maybe intellectual stimulation. So on every single level, you love your husband and everything's great, but he's not a scholar, let's say. And thank God that's not my issue. I don't think I could be married to somebody that I'm not intellectually, with. But anyway, let's say that's your issue. And now you meet Buddy. And Buddy is everything intellectually you've ever dreamed of. And you guys have these pasha moments, whatever, that you don't have with your current spouse. And this you've had for a long time. So the good stuff you've had with your spouse, you're taking for granted possibly at this point, and it's just there and you're used to it. But it's so refreshing to have this now. And you've realized what you've been missing all of this time. And in the beginning, like any new romance, you kind of get swept away. And you find yourself talking about them all the time or thinking about them all the time, even when you're with your spouse. And that will become problematic if it's not kept in check. So in order to do polyamory, you need to keep yourself very, very disciplined mentally. Not that you have to compartmentalize relationships or whatever, because that's not healthy either, but you have to be always aware of your own center and your own fulfillment. You can't let one person fulfill you. You need to see the merit at all times of why you have more than one person in your life, because otherwise it's easy to get swept away and then your original marriage could suffer. And the point of polyamory isn't to replace anybody. It's to have a fabric of love in your life, or a fabric of fulfillment, and to be surrounded by people that you resonate with no fear or limitations or boundaries. That's the point of it. So in our learning and developing and whatever, we ended up meeting a couple. And at first, the romance was between my husband and her. And she was honorable in the sense that she would not date a person. She wouldn't even meet him for a coffee unless she met me first. That was her personal rule. And she needed my thumbs up and my okay before she even, forget having an affair, before she even met the guy for coffee, she needed to talk to me. And I really respected that because I was a bit fearful going into this. This is way past my comfort zone. I'm comfortable with cheating, you know what I mean? That I'm used to seeing or whatever, and I can see how that can happen. But this was like a different trip. So her and I went out for drinks, and I loved her. Like, I loved her. I wanted her to experience him, because he's great. So it's like, you gotta try this. You're gonna love it. So it was really that loving. And I think also when I was a young girl, I had another friend, and her and I were very adventurous. So sometimes we would sleep with the same guy at different times, and we would like strategize. Like, we both thought this guy was hot, so let's both fuck him. And then we would go out for burgers and share notes and gossip about him. And those are some of like my best, memories. That was such a guilty fun thing to do. And this takes it like on a whole other level. So I felt that connection with her, and it was fun. It was really good. So her and him started dating, and as soon as they did, I got scared because I was an idiot. But I was insecure, and because she was so wonderful, and I thought, what if she's not going to want to come home because she's so great? Maybe I wouldn't want to come home to me because I'm such a bitch and she's so not. And I was afraid. So then her husband offered to meet me for lunch just to talk about it. So, because he's already, a pro at these feelings or whatever, and he was going to coach me through it. And it turned out that me and him really resonated. So it was like, oh boy, this is going to be complicated, because I guess technically that's swinging, but this really didn't start as a sexual thing. It was of a really, really deep connection. It was great. And anyway, that started to continue, and then it kind of felt like, wow, we should just get a house together and all move in. And I think I would have loved that. I really would have loved that. And I think we all would have. But, and now here's another problem that happens in polyamory, especially when two couples start dating. My husband realized that it wasn't going to work with her and him. And there was just a deal breaker that happened for him that came out later. And it was not negotiable. And my husband sat me down and said, look, I know you really, really like/love him, and I get that, and I don't have an issue with you and him. My problem is that having found this out, I can't have her in my life, or having had this happen. I can't have her in my life, not even indirectly. And he's married to her. So as long as you and him have a relationship, she's going to be indirectly involved, in our kind of circumference, and I don't want that energy around you and I. So it's kind of like, I don't think you could really see him. I don't think this can work. And he was right. And I was devastated. Devastated, devastated, devastated. But my primary marriage is home. Not that those two couldn't have been or couldn't have become, but it was very clear that there was an issue there that would have affected us as a family unit. So, and it wasn't going to work, and it wasn't fixable. So I had to make the choice to separate and stay with my husband, of course, separate from that. And it was really hard. And imagine what it was like for my husband watching me grieve losing someone else. Like, that brings up some complicated shit. So if you're going to go into polyamory, you have to be prepared for these bends and twists and dips in the road, because you go through them. Now, by the time we got to that point, we were doing the polyamory thing, full blown. Because in the beginning, you're exploring everything, right? And you're trying to figure out what your comfort zone is and your boundaries, so you got to challenge them in order to figure stuff out. And to do that requires a lot of communication. So you're talking with your husband, you're talking with your lovers, you're trying to explain shit to your friends and family that think this is ludicrous. So it seems that you're always talking about it. And that your romance or your love life becomes your entire life. And that got really old. I don't want to talk about my feelings all fucking day. You know what I mean? We have a new world order to dismantle. We have corruption in the government that needs mending. Like, there's stuff in the world. We have poverty. There's stuff in the world that needs fixing. I don't have time to sit there and talk to you about your feelings all day, or about my feelings all day, or about my sex life. I got all cocked out. just done. I didn't done, and I needed a break. And it was the same for my husband. That was an exhausting, it was exhausting. So when that broke down, all of a sudden our phone wasn't ringing anymore, and it wasn't like, oh, no one's calling. It was like, oh, okay, we got rid of everybody. No one's calling. And it was just, so then we said, should we just, be lazy? Let's just be lazy and just close the doors for a while and just me and you and get back to just each other, and we'll put the poly stuff on the shelf for a while and just be lazy. And it was like, please. So we went monogamous again. And that was nice. And that, because then there's that closeness. Because monogamy, really, when it's just the two of you, that's quite a insulating, cocoonish kind of feeling, especially after having been open and having all these friends and active and out and, stuff. So it was a nice time. And then we became ill. My husband had a lot of health issues, and really medicated. So he's exhausted, and his sex drive is reduced from meds, and just he's exhausted. And I have a brain injury. So forget that. Because now you got a headache all the time, all day long, and it was horrendous. So our sex life became very contrived. Gee, we haven't had sex in a week and that's not normal, so maybe, we should. You know what I mean? And it wasn't because we genuinely wanted to. And then his dad moved in with us, and he was going through turmoil and health issues as well. So we were busy taking care of him, taking care of ourselves, and it was just, who's got time? And instead of having an awkward, resentful thing happening, he and I sat down and we talked about it. That's the thing about being poly, is you're always very open, and poly taught us how to do that. So at this point, there's no holding back on anything. And I said, like, I don't feel like it. Like, anything I'm doing, I feel like I have to, because that's my duty as a wife, especially now that we're monogamous. But I really can't be bothered, and it's not you, it's me. I feel like shit. I don't feel well. And his reaction was, oh, thank God. Because I really don't feel like seducing anybody or whatever, and I don't feel good either. And should we just take a break and just give each body or it's a little bit of time off? And it was like, please, let's do that. So we decided to choose chastity for a while, to the point that, we even sleep in separate rooms. And it's been nice. And because there's no resentment and no problem there, it was like a health sponsored thing. It made us really close. Like, Glenn and I now are intimate on a very spiritual, mental, emotional level. We, so I'm too close to love you. That's almost, we're like brother and sister at this point. It made us so close because when you're having sex, it's easy to feel loved and fulfilled when, you're getting your rocks off. But when that's taken away, that's a lot of energy, and that has to go somewhere. And you've got to try even harder to remain connected at that point. So it really, really made us close. And, but fat. We both got so fat. I mean, I know our injuries have a lot to do with that too, because we're not mobile anymore because of our injuries. But yeah, we got fat. So, do I think we'll be chaste forever? No. I think we're physically going through a rut right now, and as soon as we get our health stabilized or whatever, that closeness will come back. Do I think we'll be monogamous after that? After having a dry spell like this? I doubt it. I'm sure. I think, and now I'm gonna teach you about compersion. Compersion is something that means that your personal ego is gone or set aside, but usually at this point it's gone. And what you feel is happiness for your spouse, to see that you get joy out of seeing your spouse receiving joy from somebody else. And I'm not talking sexually, although for some people it is, but in my, like, in most cases, compersion is an emotional, it's not a sexual thing. So when you see your spouse in love and being spoiled and romanced, you get pleasure from seeing that. The same way you would when you get your best friend. You see your best friend finds this great person and you just love them, and you think they're great together and you're all excited for them. That's exactly what it is, except you're experiencing that with your spouse. And I kind of feel like, because Glenn's had such a hard, he's had such a hard time, and I've had to be the wife that's always pushing him, or not yelling at him, but I'm constantly on him, and that's not fun either. He needs it right now, but that's not hot. You know what I mean? A nagging wife is not hot. So I feel like he needs a second wind, you know? You know how sometimes you meet a new person and they kind of flick the switch, and then suddenly you have all this energy and you're motivated and inspired and all this good stuff starts to happen? I think my husband needs that, and I can't give that to him. We've been together too long, we're too close. We've been with each other through our worst. So I think that's kind of how we see each other. You know what I mean? So I think he needs a new romance. That's what I really think he needs. I don't think um I don't think we would get to the point of, going back on another poly site and putting up ads or whatever. I don't think that works for him and I. I think with us, it would be an organic thing. It would have to happen organically. I don't think either of us would go out hunting. First of all, we're too sick right now anyway. Like, now is not the time. And we're also in transition. We need to move. His dad's still with us. We don't want to blow his mind open too fast either. Like, we're good where we are right now. But I think if somebody were to show up in our life that was open, and you'd be surprised, this is a very common lifestyle. It's just not discussed, it's taboo. It's just, I'm trying to help break that, you know. Um yeah. So I figure somebody will come into the circle that we both love, and that it's a very organic coming together. I think that's the only way it would work for him and I. And I'll probably end up with a lover on the side, just for, small bits. But I wouldn't mind opening our family up for sure. Ideally, I'm the kind of person that would do well in a commune. Someone told me that on a psychological test, actually. I had to do some test once, and it came out that I would work well in a commune type setting, and I really believe that. And that would be my ideal, if I could find the Ontario version of communal living that's not cultish, just an intentional community. I think that's where my husband and I would do best, actually. But yeah, I don't. So, like I said, you can do everything. You can be polyamorous and once in a while take on monogamy if that suits you, and chastity has its purpose in a marriage as well. I think people need to stop feeling like they need to choose and stick with it, and I think that's the problem. I think if you just take all the labels off everything and just be what you need to be in the moment for the marriage, um, I don't see what the big deal is, really. We've had a lot of fun. Like, we don't look back at those times. That's not a time we don't discuss. We talk about it all the time, and it's very affectionately, There's no. It made me a better person. I got past a lot of ego shit. I became very self assured and self fulfilled. Um, I've had some delicious experiences. I have a treasure trove of memories. Um, yeah, I'm. It's a good thing. So when you see families that maybe are different than you, leave them alone. And just because there's a family that might have two wives or and a boyfriend or however many people live together, that doesn't mean that they're having orgies in the middle of the living room that everybody sees. Polyamorous relationships are not intrinsically sexual. That doesn't mean that people don't have sex. Of course, that happens, like with any relationship, but it's more about sharing your life with and sharing your heart and your emotions and cultivating love and abiding friendship. And relationships shift and evolve, and sometimes you spend more time with one than the other, and new people come in and some people leave, and it's a very organic, ever expanding, contracting, changing thing, and all of it's beautiful, and it's beautiful. And even the sad times are beautiful because it's all love based. The happy and the sad, it's all love. And when you're dealing with love, that can never be wrong. And nobody has to hide anything. There's no lies. There's no betrayal. It's beautiful. And I think poly families should be left alone. I'm not talking about, where children are abused, but there are a lot of happy polyamorous families that are raising children in very beautiful, healthy manner. And the only thing that is evil is the fact that they have to feel that they need to keep that a secret. That a family unit can't go to a restaurant together and say, this is my wife Susie and our wife Georgia. You know what I mean? Why not? What's the big deal? Together we have 3 kids. So what? What's the big deal? And the fact that these people have to hide for fear of losing their children is ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. You will never find a child that is more supported and more emotionally nourished than a child that's being raised in a polyamorous household. Because the whole point of polyamory is A, self-actualization, and B, total unconditional love and openness. That's so beautiful. And when you have it in your love life, that tends to permeate through all other areas of your life. That attitude becomes your personal character. Talk about walking in the path of like the Christ energy, being totally unconditionally loving and totally self-actualized. That's the whole point of enlightenment, is rounded up in those 2 sentences. And polyamory is a practice that will get you to that place. So to have a child raised in that level of enlightenment is only a good thing. So stop making these people be afraid. Instead, that's the new relationship paradigm. That's the enlightened relationship paradigm. And anything else is actually quite fear-based. Our monogamy is lazy. We're doing it specifically so we can be lazy, as is our chastity. You know what I mean? We're putting the romance part of our life on the shelf so we don't have to, give it any energy, which is okay, and it's serving a purpose because we're too sick to do anything else anyway. But the point is that we're doing it to be insulated, where polyamory opens you up to life and the world. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a lot good, actually. And it's good for a child to be raised in that kind of security and support system. So stop terrorizing these families and making them feel afraid. They shouldn't have to. And that's my spiel.